mà. Cái bài của Tiến đâu nhỉ? Cái thứ ba này đúng không? Ok.
Vâng,
Mình cover những cái phần nào rồi?
hết cái phần đầu và câu đầu tiên của frame 2.
Ok, vậy thì anh sẽ hỏi lại một vài câu của frame 1 để xem trả lời được không nhé. All right, let's get the ball rolling. I like to talk about the first frame here. What types of consumer products are popular in Vietnam?
Well, I'd say the biggest one here in our country is definitely smartphones. I mean, people here rely on their phones for literally everything, not just for communication. Whenever you go to a street in Vietnam, you will see street food vendors uh, that use QR codes for payment, and therefore the demand for these kinds of gadgets is extremely massive because it's completely integrated into our lives.
Hmm, really? Still that short? Not satisfied. Do it again.
Okay, so I will use another idea then. Should I?
It doesn't matter. I was drifting, I didn't listen to a word you said. I just wanted to, just let my mind drift to see if you could just keep on speaking. I would stop you after a while, maybe like 40 seconds or 45 seconds, but I need, a bit more content. Let's do it again. What types of consumer products are popular in Vietnam?
Well, I'd say the biggest one right here in Vietnam is definitely smartphones, especially those from the iPhone brand. What I mean here is that people in Vietnam really admire and praise for iPhones, not just because of its aesthetic appeal, but because of the fact that iPhones are so much more convenient in Vietnam compared to other brands of phones. I mean, if an iPhone user can use a feature called Apple Pay, to pay for literally anything when they come to any stores in Vietnam without having to open their phones. So people here, especially tech users, are loving this kind of phone because it's so convenient and helps them to practically having a comfortable buying experience in the
Thank you.
country.
That should be fine. Hmm. Hold on. Did I stop you at literally the same point that you stopped yourself in your previous answer?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, it means that I have evolved. I've had a change of heart. That's all. I'm flexible, right? I'm not rigid.
Okay.
I am entitled to changing my opinions. Okay, let's cover the second frame here. Again, I'm not quite sure about other people, but from my personal experience, if the examiner starts with a question in a second frame, usually it's not a good sign. Okay.
Yeah.
What elements are important when people buy or rent accommodation?
I strongly believe that location is the element that break or make a decision when it comes to buying or renting an accommodation. In big cities, the traffic can be an absolute nightmare, so minimizing the daily commute is extremely important. For example, I have seen a lot of people who would willingly sacrifice their spacious or beautiful house in the suburbs to live in a tiny, cramped apartment just because it's a stone thrown away from their company. So I think that convenience always takes top priority when it comes to making these kinds of decisions.
Damn. Oh, you could have gone on and just say one more thing, or maybe one more idea in a very superficial way. So in addition to being in close proximity, were you talking about like being in close proximity to a workplace?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
You could have look, sometimes you have to I don't encourage you to read your examiner's facial expressions because I tried
Mm,
that once. and he gave me 7.5, right? And the same man 1 year later gave me 8.5, but not any 8.5, but more like 9.8, nine
Yeah.
nine. I could have got all nines, but of course, he thought that I used the wrong word here and there, right? That could have been like done, 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 because I got nine for writing that test as well. Damn, there was an eight for lexical resources. But what I'm trying to say here is that in addition to bragging about my scores every once in a while, to remind you of the person who's spending time with you, right, wearing his tank top, that in addition to that, I think that sometimes when you speak, you have to kind of like just feel the vibe of the place. And if your examiner is not gonna stop you, you have to take the initiative of just
Um,
adding one more sentence, a brief extension of an idea, and then you might want to go down. I didn't want to stop you because you didn't sound like you were about to wrap up your answer. I felt like you still had a lot of gas in your tank. I thought that you could have just kept on speaking, right? But no, you did not keep the ball rolling. So that was maybe it was my fault, but maybe it was your fault as well. More of the
uh,
latter. So let's do it again.
okay.
Like if you want to
uh,
if you want to, you know, like tell the examiner to move on with like the next question because I'm running out of things to say, you have to, give him or her a more obvious hint by the way that you speak. For instance, what was the last sentence that you said?
so convenience always takes top priority when it comes to making these kinds of decisions.
Okay, so if I were you, I would say something like this, right? I'm aware of the fact that, yeah, I'm coming to a conclusion. Let's end this on a not a high note because it's gonna, give off the impression that you want to keep on speaking. But I feel like, responsible examiners tend to just, you know, jump in with a follow-up question anyway because you sound so robotic. You sound like you are reading from a script, right? You have that monotonous voice that I've been complaining about for a couple of lessons. But if I were you, I was something like this. So I think that ultimately, convenience is the factor that always gets Hold on. What exactly were you saying again? Hold on. I think I can put the pieces together. As you can tell, my mind is not at all together today, right? That tends to happen when you finish a class at like 1 in the morning. I feel like my brains are like jumping from one dimension to another, like one universe to another. Anyway, that sentence. Um, so I think, what do I think here? Can you remind me of that sentence again?
Um, so for me, convenience always takes top priority when it comes to making these kinds of decisions.
Okay. Um, if I were you, I would say something like this. For me, convenience would always take like top priority when people make this sort of decisions. That's how I would, put it.
Yeah.
To sort of signal to the examiner that, yeah, I'm running out of things to say. I feel like there are subtle differences with regard to our speaking paces. I tend to, stretch some of the phrases out and go up and down a bit more than you do. So
Mm.
you need to think about that, right? Don't be so nonchalant and monotonous.
Actually, uh, in my mind, I have varied my intonation. I have tried to stress more, yeah, and I even end the sentence with a falling intonation. But maybe
It didn't work.
my efforts weren't that noticeable.
Um, okay. I don't see anything wrong with your speaking pace though. But I do have to say that because in a way you're confining yourself to the same rhythm. Like I don't think that there is a particular part where you're gonna go like really fast. Like when you listen to me, can you notice a difference between phrases. There are phrases I go through really fast, and there's certain words that I'm gonna stretch and stress as much as I can. Okay. I'm not saying that you have to sound like me to get a 9 or an 8.5 or an 8, but at the moment I feel like the way that you speak is not exactly effective because I can't really decide if you have already wrapped up your answer or if you feel like, you know, you still have more in store for me, you know. So let's do it
Mm.
again, and then we move on to a different question. I feel like that, there's certain issues that can be fixed with a logical solution. Like we analyze stuff and we dissect stuff, but then there are certain issues that can only be fixed through experience, right? What elements are important when people buy or rent accommodation?
Well, I strongly believe that location is the ultimate deal breaker when it comes to making these kinds of decisions. I mean, in big cities like Hanoi, the traffic can be an absolute nightmare. So, minimizing your daily commute time is extremely important. So, I have seen many people who would willingly sacrifice their spacious, beautiful house in the suburbs just to live in a cramped or tiny apartment that is a stone throw away from their workplace. So for me, I think that convenience is the most important factor when it comes to deciding whether to buy or to rent an accommodation.
Fine. All
Is
right.
that better?
It was slightly better because there was that slight pause at the end. You said something like hold on, what you say? Convenience is the priority that's gonna get like prioritized or be is the priority that's gonna be put on the front burner when people make decisions related to renting or buying accommodation. There was that hesitation that you used that sort of you know imply that you needed me to jump in to save you with a follow-up question. I think so. Yeah, but then there was that thing about you said something about something and your intonation was flat. If I were you, I would have gone down and up, but then the word has slipped my mind. Like literally right before you popped that question of whether or not you hit the nail on the head at the end, I was thinking about that phrase and I wanted to give you that comment, but then, it has slipped off my radar already. Um, there's no point retracing it, so let's continue. Third frame, interesting. Now, what impact can consumer goods have on the environment?
Well, for me, the ones off the top of my mind is actually the environmental cost that our consumer goods are having on the environment. I mean that from my observation, people in our society keep buying fast fashion items like cheap clothing just to keep up with the trends. And with platforms such as Shein that supply this kind of fast fashion items, people are just buying a bunch of clothing that cannot be easily recycled or have a detrimental effect on the environment.
Hmm. No, not that good. Let's do it again. I felt like you were, how should I say this? Your intonation was monotonous, as I've mentioned. Didn't work. Let's do it again.
Um,
When you try to explain things to, kids in English, do you go up and down or do you use the same rhythm?
uh, I stress the important information. Yeah. I don't teach kids that much. Yeah, I only teach high schoolers and above. Yeah.
Same
So I
difference.
mostly,
Same difference. The question is, when you
yeah.
explain things to them, do you go up and down? Do you emphasize the crucial pieces of information? Do you stretch, certain words just to emphasize a message? Or do you treat essentially all words the same?
No, I don't treat any words the same. I will stress on the important information, the key concepts, etc. But I don't like to stretch my words because I kind of find it what should I say unnatural. Yeah, because for
You do realize that when you said unnatural, that was like the most natural word that you have used in this entire lesson. How should I say unnatural? Unnatural, right?
okay, unnatural. So maybe I'm not that aware of the fact that people, the native speakers, they stretch their words because when I listen to them, I just feel like um, they're not stretching their words. Yeah,
They don't stress their
that
words
sort of
all
thing.
the time. And of course,
Yeah.
cannot really compare like the average like English speaker to those who are really like authentic, not authentic, but more like those who are really good when it comes to speaking, right? And I'm not exactly, requiring you to perform on the level of band nine. Band nine is described as expert. And I'm not quite sure if all of all English speakers who are native speakers, would get nine in the speaking test. I'm not sure. In fact,
Mm,
if I'm not mistaken, even for the UK, the average is not nine for speaking,
yeah.
right? So you cannot really, I mean, you can. I mean, I don't want to say you cannot because that's like oppressing. But what I'm trying to say is that, you don't really, you're not exactly making a strong case for yourself when you say that, well, foreign, like native speakers don't do this, native speakers don't do that. I mean, there are different kinds of native speakers, just as that there are different kinds of Vietnamese speakers, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Even for adults, there are people who speak in a really eloquent way. And when you listen to them, you feel like, oh my God, Vietnamese is this great. And I'm restricted to all of these nonsensical buzzwords on the internet. I ought to be ashamed of myself, right? And then there are people who mince words. They chop, very simple ideas into like individual words and cover these words in a really boring rhythm, right? That's just not a good point to make, but it's valid. Well, do what you must then. As I've mentioned, I feel like you're more than a seven, but if you feel like that's all you can get, that's all you can get, then do something about
No,
it.
no, I don't want another seven. Yeah, I actually got a 6.5 in my first test and a seven in the second one. So I would rather not have another seven.
Well, that
Yeah.
might be the spirit.
Yeah.
Let's continue. Let's do that again. What impact can consumer goods have on the environment?
Mm, well, off the top of my mind, there's a lot of impacts, but the most devastating one is definitely the environmental cost that consumer goods having on the environment. I mean, we're living in a society that really prioritizes comfort and convenience, which creates a massive, well, I mean, plastic footprint. I mean, whenever a person orders any food on a delivery app, even when they just order a single cup of iced tea, or it will be delivered with a plastic cup, a plastic lid, and a plastic straw, and that sort of thing. And all of those plastic thingies will only be used for about maybe 10 or 20 minutes, and then they will be thrown away, um, spending the rest of their life in the landfill. Hmm. Can I do it again?
Sure. What impact can
Okay.
consumer goods have on the environment?
Um, off the top of my mind, the most
Hold on.
devastating
Off
in
the top of my mind, I'm not quite sure if there's that version because the one that I'm familiar with is more like off the top of my head, at the
uh,
back of my mind.
okay. Uh,
Come on.
I have to write this down. Okay, so off the top of my head, I think the most devastating impact that consumer goods can have on the environment is definitely the packaging waste. I mean, we're living in a society that prioritizes convenience and comfort, which creates a massive plastic footprint. I mean, just thinking about ordering a cup of coffee on any delivery app right now in Vietnam, it will come with a plastic cup, a plastic straw, a lid that is also plastic, and a carrier bag that is made from non-degradable material, and all of those plastic thingy will all be used for maybe about 10 or maybe 20 minutes, and then they will be thrown away, spending the majority of their life in a landfill and unable to be recycled and having a long-term or maybe an indelir sorry,
What's the
having
last
a
sentence?
detrimental impact on the environment.
Okay. Um, I felt like towards the end, yeah, I did ask you to stretch things out, but then you overdid it and you did it with virtually all the words. So that sort of got on my nerves. Just the last sentence. So they would spend the bulk of their time just drifting from one place to another, or, you know, being buried underground instead of being recycled. Recycled. Like essentially, look, there must be a rhythm there.
So these plastic thingy will spend the majority of their life be buried underground and not having the chance to be recycled.
Hmm. A bit, one not one word at a time, but everything is like too connected. You need a better chunking technique. Let's do it again. Just the last sentence. These
Okay,
plastic
so
thingies.
so all of these plastic thingy, they will spend the majority of their life be buried underground and not having the chance to ever see daylight or be recycled in the future.
Or be recycled in the future. Or be recycled in the future.
Be recycled in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Maybe you are improving. Maybe we are just splitting hairs. Not you, but me. I have encountered that situation a couple of times. Like during the class, I'm telling my students to, you have to say it like this, you have to say it like this, you have to pause here, you have to pause here. Like when the class is happening, I can clearly hear the difference. But when I watch the video again, apparently, we've been doing the same thing, and I'm the one who's like blowing things out of proportions. Hmm. Well, just one more question, and I'm gonna release you. I haven't given you any feedback regarding your vocabulary because I thought your vocabulary was fine. Some of the words were, in a way, a bit out of context. Like when you said that the plastic pieces would never get to see daylight. Um, in order for you to use that phrase, you have to say that, these pieces are essentially, buried underground, right? Did you say that?
Yes, yeah, and making a contrast there.
Hmm. Because at the back of my mind, I was thinking about, okay, how about the plastic pieces that, just drift in the ocean? What happened to
Mm.
them?
I already mentioned about the fact that they are being buried underground. So my instinct is to incorporate a phrase to never see daylight because I think it's funny. Uh,
But the
uh,
question is,
to see.
I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying that the thing there's the thin boundary between being wrong and being like inappropriate. I just didn't see the point of mentioning that they would never get to see daylight, right? Because the most direct word would be to be recycled or to be put
Mm,
to good use, you know? These are the two important words. You were able to use the word recycle. I just don't see the point of using never get to see daylight.
Okay, so okay, I want to use again.
Mm. Um, let's continue. Just one more question and then we're done. What changes may occur to tourist destinations in the future?
Mm, I think that in the future, the local authorities they have to enforce more stricter regulations to prevent over tourism. I mean, right now, from my observation, a lot of beautiful natural spots are being ruined by the sheer volume of visitors. And these kinds of visitors, they also leave a huge amount of trash behind them. So in the future, I can imagine that there will be some kind of rules that limit the daily numbers of trash a tourist can put on the environment, or there is some kinds of, I'd say, environmental taxes just to keep these places sustainable and to keep the tourist littering.
One word at a time. One word at a time. Also, limit the number of trash. You mean the amount?
Yeah, the amount of trash.
Okay. But towards the end, you started to resort to that, one or two word per chunk. But there was no chunk. It was just one or two word at a time. There was no chunk. Hmm. Well, that's all for today then. Not
No,
exactly, not exactly like a
okay.
satisfying end, but you know what? There won't be any satisfying end. Even when you get band 9, there's still days when you can't really put the pieces together, as I have demonstrated at the beginning of
Yeah,
this class, right? I couldn't even like connect the dots and recall the sentence that you told me. So it happens to the best of us. Not that I am the best of us. Right? Okay. Bye bye.
thank you. Bye bye.